Welcome to my podcast number 8. I'm Glen Cooper. I'm a business broker in Denver. I've been helping people buy, sell, and value small businesses for nearly 50 years. I've also written the only book on the subject called Glen Cooper on Business Brokerage. It's available on Amazon as a large printed book or its Kindle version. More on that later. Today in this episode, I'm going to tell you why you need to write the story of your business for a buyer prospect to see and read. I call that an offering summary, but there are other names for it. Some call it a CIM, Confidential Information Memorandum, that's CIM. Some brokers call it a CBR, for Confidential Business Review. I just call it an offering summary. But no matter what it's called, it's the written story of the business that you have for sale, when and why it was created, what it does, and what its future can be under a right new owner. Now, some people think they simply cannot write that story, so they don't even try. That's a big mistake. You simply must tell your business story, and actually you must write it. With a good story to tell and a polished document to offer for telling it, your business will stand out from all the others. That'll make it worth a lot more in the eyes of buyers. Right now, you're probably thinking, oh no, I can't write. But since I anticipated that reaction, let me take this podcast to tell you not only why you must, but also how you can. I may even kickstart your writing career. Well, at least as it pertains to telling your own business story. It all starts when you realize that all humans get totally swept up in stories. And then you also realize that your buyer prospects are the same as all other humans. Let me repeat that. It all starts when you realize that all humans get totally swept up in stories. And then also realize that your buyer prospects are the same as all other humans. Now to my side, you will see a graphic showing what I'm about to say. There are 3 reasons why we need a business story. Number 1, evolution has taught us that stories pass down knowledge, build security for our tribe, and forge social bonds. Neurological hardwiring releases oxytocin, dopamine, and cortisol when we read a good story that triggers feelings, keeps our emotions intact, and helps us remember. Psychological growth of our mirror neurons helps us bond and recognize experiences that we read about as if they actually happened to us. Okay, I know that sounds complicated. Let me try to say it a little bit more and maybe in a simpler way. Humans like to listen to stories because our brains are evolutionarily hardwired and biochemically rewarded to process stories as narrative information. Long before written language, storytelling around a fire served as humanity's primary survival tool for passing down knowledge and building empathy and forging social bonds. These are the psychological, neurological, and evolutionary reasons behind our universal obsession with stories. Listening to a compelling character-driven narrative causes our brains to release a specific cocktail of hormones that alters our emotional state. We release oxytocin as a bonding hormone to spike during empathetic moments, triggering feelings of trust, compassion, and deep social connection. We release dopamine during moments of suspense, mystery, or cliffhangers that focuses our attention and heightens memory retention. We release cortisol when triggered by a story's conflict or distress that helps us focus on the stakes and remember that event or the story. You know, when we read a story, we experience what scientists call, and now it's a big word, neural coupling and empathy. I believe that our brainwaves literally synchronize with what the authors were thinking as each author wrote his or her story, a process neuroscientists do call neural coupling. Furthermore, a story activates the brain's sensory and motor cortex, the same regions that fire when we experience an event firsthand. Finally, our mirror neurons, lots of big words here, allow us to feel what the author is feeling along the entire spectrum of fear to joy, as if it were happening to us, serving as an emotional exercise that expands our real-world empathy and social intelligence. From an evolutionary perspective, stories are low-risk life recipes. They act as a safe mental flight simulator. By listening to how a character in a story navigates a real threat, like outsmarting a competitor, surviving in a downturn, or handling a tough situation in a small business, we mentally practice handling those situations ourselves as we read the author's experience in that moment, in that business. Isn't that fascinating? The human mind is a meaning-making machine that craves order over chaos. As a business buyer, we will buy the business that has the story we like, and we do like a good story. We especially like to be the hero of a good story, and it's easy to write your business story so that the buyers see themselves as the hero that saves the day when they buy the business. Technical language, raw facts, and long paragraphs, complicated spreadsheets, and even simple statistics portrayed as little graphs or pie charts can overload our senses and are easily forgotten without that story. A compelling narrative, however, provides structured sequences of cause and effect, which our brains actually store in their long-term memories as those stories, making narrative information presented as a good story much easier to understand, visualize, and recall. So that's why. The next question is, how do we do this? How do we go about creating, then writing down our business story, and then packaging that story with the financial information in a way that motivates buyers to move forward to buy our business? For years, I've struggled with this question as I've had to train my fellow brokers. In my early years, back in the 1970s, yes, I go that far back, I was a solo practitioner business broker, but my previous jobs had been in public relations for banks, state government, and then being the managing director of the Maine State Shakespeare Theater in Monmouth, Maine, of all things. In those jobs, I was always writing press releases, pamphlets, formal reports, and proposals, and ads. And my hobby on the side as a teenager was electoral politics. Again, nearly always writing things. You don't know that, but I was a youthful activist. So it came naturally for me to write, and nonfiction writing was my forte. What I was surprised at was that when I grew my company as a business broker, the other brokers were almost never capable of writing offering summaries. Most were just numbers crunchers. But again, I lucked out. The office manager I hired in 1993, named Lee Edwards, and she was wonderful. She was with me for 20 years, had a degree from Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine in English literature, and she could write. And she also owned her own business and was a business broker before she joined my firm. By the 1990s, I had way too much volume in writing offering summaries, but luckily Lee joined me and learned how quickly and was writing those offering summaries nearly full time as her job. Today, Lee is still a business broker with my old firm in Maine that I sold in 2010. And so ever since coming to Colorado, then I have done most of the writing myself in Colorado. But now as I'm getting older, I am slower. So I have to figure out how to teach writing offering summaries to other people. And I'm hoping to attract some of you. In what will be my third edition of my book, probably in a few years, I will incorporate what I'm podcasting today. So I think the answer to how I'm going to train brokers is this. I'm going to break it down, explain why the story is needed, as I have just done, why people are hooked on it, then proceed to outline a plan for teaching it. Today, I'm thinking about who you are as you are listening today. Learning to write for most of you, most of us, is a nearly lost art today. It was always a rare art to begin with. So let's start modestly with an outline. Next to me now in the video is my initial outline suggestion in just 10 parts for you to start thinking about your business story in an outline form. As I said at the end of my last podcast, the key question is who is your ideal buyer and what can they do with your business? Buyers buy small businesses to go to work in the business to make money, and then while working on the business to grow the business. So here's what I suggest as a starting outline. Let me just read these points first, just say a few words, and then give you some homework to do because we're almost at the end of my podcast. Working in the business. What does your business do? Why does it do it the way it does it? What are your unique systems? Who is on your team in that business? What's your business track record? Working on the business, the questions are, what changes are coming? What systems need changing? How can your team improve? How can your teamwork improve? What's the future track record? And what kind of buyer is needed to do that? Now, those of you who know my work will recognize the terms systems, teamwork, and track record because that's my business mantra in my brokerage business. My elevator pitch is that I have systems that I have developed and tweaked for nearly 50 years that do the work for my clients in the way it should be done. Systems that should be followed. I have a team that works in the way my clients want it done, and I have a track record that shows that I know how it gets done. So my suggestion is that you follow my mantra and make it yours. Systems, teamwork, track record. The way it should be done, the way you want it done, and the way it actually gets done. Now, we'll cover more ground next time in this direction. But my homework assignment for you is to ponder how you can create your business story using those ideas and that outline. Think about what has happened in the past story of your business that would be interesting for a buyer to know, to understand who you are, what kind of business you have, how you do what you do, what needs changing, and how they can find it compelling to be the hero that writes the next chapter of your business. Think about how you might use my outline to answer a buyer's likely questions. Then read the sections of my book that deal with these subjects. In my book, Glen Cooper on Business Brokerage, I tell my story, what systems I have, what promises I make to clients, and how I use my team to fulfill those promises and build my track record. The book is available at Amazon in paperback and as a Kindle version, convertible to a PDF format. It's a 300-page, 8.5 by 11-inch, 2-pound book. It's a biggie, with 36 chapters on the 5 challenges that business brokers face selling businesses and what works and what doesn't. It's the only book on the market that describes the business brokerage and what it's all about. You know, I have 47 years doing this work in 3 states, Maine, New Hampshire, and Colorado. I've had something to do with selling over 650 businesses of all sizes and shapes, from amusement parks, starting with A, to Z-Bart franchises, starting with Z. And I've been doing this so long that you probably don't even know what a Z-Bart franchise is. Look it up. The chapters I would call to your attention for this assignment in my book are chapters 9 and 19. 9 is on my systems, teamwork, and track record, and chapter 19 is about my secret recipe for success, which has 4 ingredients and 7 assembly steps that you can follow, which we may talk about in the next podcast. You know, as a business broker, for all these years, I've been tossed, sauteed, broiled, and baked slowly over many years. I've learned a lot, and I guess I've become the expert in my field. Kind of silly. But as I explained to a seller prospect I met just yesterday, my experience is still growing rapidly. Every day as my world around me changes constantly. We now use ChatGPT to organize our seller client notes. I now have learned how to do about half the things on my cell phone. God bless me. And I have learned to use a teleprompter, just like I'm using it now that I've connected to Zoom. My podcast is now on YouTube, and my podcast producer is featuring me on LinkedIn. Thank you, Christy, using AI to summarize my podcast. How's that? I'm 78 years old, soon to be 79, but For me, every day is a new day. I'm going to see you next in my podcast number 9. I'll continue my talk and tell you my business story and help you write yours. Thanks for listening. Until next time.